Hi folks, GMM UK here, September 21st. I think it's take 127 now. Bloody Windows Movie Maker. It's Gremlins. Early last week, a couple of friends actually sent a few messages and texts. Oh, there's a program on 9/11, ITV. As if it's going to produce something we don't already know. Considering all these people are 9/11 truthers, they believe 9/11 is an inside job, I'm frankly amazed anyone still believes that the media are going to try and get nearer the truth. The media's role in this is to keep you as far away from the truth as possible. There's probably three main reasons why they do this. They want to give the impression that they're impartial. They also have to make sure that they never sort of go near who the real perpetrators are, and in order to do that, they have to put the dairy somewhere else. And in this particular show, this is exactly what occurred. I grant you, those 28 redacted pages were put together rather like the way Paul Wolfowitz, Douglas Fife and Richard Pearl concocted the three reasons to invade Iraq. It was just made up. So the 28 redacted pages, we will never see them. But what the purpose is to take the dairy away from the real perpetrators and point the finger at the Saudis. Let's get one thing straight. I'm never going to support the Saudi regime. They only show one thing. They show how low mankind can get. They've got all the money in the world, and yet their people live in fear to obey rules that are just ridiculous. And anyone that shows any dissent, off with their heads. So what kind of rule is this? When I think of how these people have to live, when they should have the lot. But at the end of the day, Saudi Arabia had nothing to do with 9/11. Why do I know this? Why do I say this? Because think back. Initially, they blamed 19 Saudi hijackers. Straight away, Saudi Arabia. Yet, they ended up attacking Afghanistan and Iraq. So, what we have here is a serious geographical malfunction. And so, why didn't the media point out this very serious anomaly? It doesn't get worse than this. You point the finger of blame at one country, and you attack two different countries. Not a word. So now when it suits, they're putting the dairy back on Saudi Arabia. And it doesn't make sense. The Saudi rulers, who have been protected since 1971, the deal with Nixon and the petrodollar, they've been given carte blanche to do what they want, just so long as the sale of petroleum is conducted in dollars. This gave America an almighty edge. And it propped up the dollar so that basically America could print money for fun. This is how do you think they got 800 odd bases all over the world? They spend $1 trillion a year on defense. Call it defense. kicking the shit out of anyone that so much as looks boss-eyed at them. So Saudi Arabia had no motive. Let's get one thing straight. I don't give a shit about all you idiots that straight away accuse people of being conspiracy theorists. You've got to have motive, unless you're a complete lunatic. You've got to have motive, and Saudi Arabia had none. So, what did happen that day? What should we be looking at? And I believe this is where we go wrong. Because why do we have to get involved in any detail when immediately we know the media is telling lies? Now, again, how can I say this with authority, you could say? It's because I understand physical laws, certain physical laws. I mean, what happens here happens in the Andromeda Galaxy and elsewhere in the universe. It's not like having national laws which are restricted to boundaries. Physical laws cannot be defied. And I remember speaking to Professor Niels Harrer once at the opportunity to speak to this good man, and he told me that, I was pretty sure kerosene fuel burns no more than 1,000 degrees, and Professor Harrer told me that you're talking about to melt grade A steel or to compromise grade A steel, you need temperatures in excess of 2,500 degrees. So, what did we see on the day of 9/11? We saw controlled demolitions. And what are controlled demolitions? An implosion where a building is collapsed at and it falls as if there is nothing underneath it. In other words, symmetrically at freefall speed. To do this, you have to take out all the support columns at the same time. And when we watch controlled demolitions on TV, you see pop, 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 and then it's just an implosion straight in. This is what we saw. Why is it that our eyes see, but so few of us observe? Now, the only way to bring about what we saw that day in New York is through controlled demolition. I guarantee you have 1 million skyscrapers and fly 1 million planes totally loaded with fuel, whatever. You will never once see what occurred. And I'll stake my life on that. To this day, when they take down buildings, they don't fly planes into them. They meticulously plant explosives all the way up. So we saw controlled demolitions. Why do we get involved in anything else? Why? And the worst thing is seeing these people come out insisting, the laser weapon, Dr. Judy Wood laser weapon, and the no planes theory. And even if she's right and I'm wrong, there is one rule that is forbidden to break with something like this, with 9/11, and that is to play into the hands of the perpetrators. Anyone who so much as mentions Dr. Judy Wood is doing that, is playing into the hands of the chief protagonists. What is it that people cannot understand about this? It just never ceases to amaze me. And I say to people, can't you understand what we need to achieve? We need to get, once we know we were lied to, once we know we saw controlled demolitions, That means access had to be given into the buildings to do all this. So it begs the question, who owned the towers? Larry Silverstein? And we go from there. Therefore, whatever the media is telling us is a bullshit story. Who needs the detail? We have to get the perpetrators in the dock. Everything that's occurring today is as a result of 9/11. So it's now 15 years. And the mass murderers are getting exactly what they wanted. Chaos in the Middle East and the erosion of our civil liberties so that they could never be tried for their crimes and they can do what the hell they like with people like me and whatever. Because we went past the point of no return with 9/11. To commit such gargantuan crimes. So we have to think tactically. Dr. Judy Wood. Anyway, like I said, we have mountains of evidence that suggest 9/11 was an inside job. And before we even talk about the controlled demolitions, what happened to American civil air defense that day? And again, once again, we see the total breakdown of protocol on the key day. Now, what normally happens when planes lose radio contact, when they're hijacked, or when they veer off course? Within 5 minutes, 2 F-16s are right beside her with Payne Stewart's little Cessna, the golfer that tragically died, I think, a year before 9/11. They used 6 F-16s because the plane was still flying while they were all dead in the plane. They couldn't do anything, and that's how it works. It's something like 100 times a year. So, and the unbelievable thing is, no terrorist would ever dream of doing such a thing. I mean, for starters, who would want to attack America in their right mind? Unless you've got a penchant for Harry Carey, or whatever it's bloody called. I mean, every terrorist would know that they'd never get anywhere near the Twin Towers because straight away, the moment you're heading for downtown Manhattan, that plane is going to get shot out the sky. Once it looks like there's no hope. How could this occur? Of course, who is in charge of US Civil Air Defense? General Richard Myers. This is what the media, now, if this was a real event, if this was a real terrorist event of what occurred, is what we were told, then the media would be stringing up Richard Myers, would be, his name was never mentioned. I mean, 3,000 Americans die because this guy doesn't do his job. They let those planes hit those buildings. This is just the only explanation. I mean, especially, let's say the first one hits. The second plane is now heading for downtown Manhattan. You can see it on the radar. It's done a 180-degree turn. The first plane hit at 8:46 a.m. The second plane hit at 9:03, was it? 17 minutes later. Ample time to shoot down the plane. They never did. They let them. And the third one, apparently, that hit the Pentagon. A plane hitting the Pentagon, the planes don't disappear into thin air for starters. And make a round hole like that. But for a plane to traipse around the most protected US airspace freely, as if, come, let's go on a sightseeing tour here, is impossible. There is no way a plane can ever hit the Pentagon if people are doing their job. Anyway, so what happens? Not only does the media not question this outrageous anomaly, what happens to General Richard Myers? He's promoted to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Now, I don't care who you are. If such negligence and such irresponsibility leads to promotion, then, I mean, you've got to be mad to completely off your head not to question what's going on here. So let's get back to Larry Silverstein. Did he do anything weird after he bought the towers for a knockdown $15 million? I mean, the reason why they were so cheap, that they were sold up, because they were an asbestos bombshell. There was $1 billion worth of repairs needed. But Larry didn't go looking for the greatest asbestos remover in the world. He went looking for insurance. Now, I worked in the insurance business for a few years. And one thing I do know, and one thing everybody should know, you can't buy a Ferrari and insure it 100 times. And then it goes on the missing list and suddenly you claim for 100 Ferraris. You just can't do that. If it's a legitimate claim, you get paid out once and that's it. Larry somehow managed to insure his properties for 300 to 500 times more than what he paid. How can this is against all the rules? But what gets me is the fact that the sheer greed of it all is what does my head in. Because Larry Silverstein specifically asked to have written in a clause stating that should his buildings be destroyed in a terrorist attack, this is 100% true, that he gets paid out double. Silverstein allegedly was paid out between 5 and 7 billion. And the media never once mentioned his name. He's best friends with Benjamin Netanyahu too. Takes one to know one, eh? So we're not talking winning the lottery here. We're talking billions. This is one of the frauds of the century here. And the media never mentioned Larry Silverstein's role. Now, if I was in charge, the first thing I'd have said is, Silverstein, here, you've got to sit a lie detector test, pal. And if it had made any waves, I'd have said, listen, Sonny, 3,000 of our citizens have just got wiped out, and you're giving me a hard time? You sit the lie detector test, and we're going to ask you 2 questions. Did you have prior warning? And did you allow explosives to be put in your building? Now, am I being unreasonable here? I defy one American to tell me I'm being unreasonable here. If Larry Silverstein was innocent, he should have he would gladly sit the lie detector test, or take the lie detector. I mean, I see it all the time on the FBI files and crime stories. When I'm in one of my tossing and turning bouts in the middle of the night, they've got someone in the frame. The first thing the FBI say is sit a lie detector test. The guy takes the test, usually willingly if he's innocent, and often when they refuse to take the test, the alarm bells are ringing. But if you're innocent, the first thing you want is to be proved you're innocent, and the lie detector machine can do that. But I mean, when you have a disaster of these proportions, and You do everything to find out what went on. I defy anybody to tell me I'm not right here. And in fact, if you do that, I only assume one thing: you're with the real terrorists. So quite how Larry Silverstein isn't at the centre of the investigation, I'll never know. I mean, there's even more damning evidence against him, because not enough people know, that's for sure, that another building that he owned collapsed that day. Only this one wasn't hit by a plane. And there were two unbelievable things that occurred, and these are the two most damning pieces of evidence. First of all, Larry Silverstein said in an interview that there was such a loss of life that day, so in the end we made the decision to pull the building. Now, pull is a demolition term. There were no tug-of-war contests going on in New York that day. So he's actually admitted they brought the building down. They pulled it. How did they do that? Where did they put the explosives in the building to actually pull it? Now, incredibly, the BBC actually reported that it had collapsed, but the poor lady had no idea that the building was still standing over her left shoulder. Even more incredible, it's okay, they could have written this off as a mistake, but what happened 23 minutes later, it did collapse. Now, how'd you get out of this? This is game, set and match here. There's no getting out of this. The BBC were obviously reading a script. And it proves at the very best, the media was complicit with 9/11. Now, I know why this all happened, but I'm not going to tell you about it because it's detail. We don't need to know all this. We just need to know what I just told you, because this is open and shut. So all these people, oh, but it was this and it was that, and oh, maybe he did this and that. All this nonsense. Anyway, that's the first part. I'll see you again tomorrow. Cheers.